to mark the time when the tragedy of Uvalde started to unfold. And what she said, it's just one small way we can stand in solidarity with our families, colleagues, and friends in Uvalde. So with her words in our minds and hearts now, I would like to propose a moment of silence for all of us here on this call. Please join me now for 2 minutes of quiet reflection. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, Tanya.
Hi, Elena. Sorry to bother you.
It's okay.
Thank you, everyone. During our time together today, we will focus on what individuals have the power to do in moments like these. And that's why I'm so grateful and candidly relieved to have Ellen Galinsky join us today. Many of you know Ellen. She is the author of Mind in the Making. Some of you have gone through our trainings on Mind in the Making. She's also the Chief Science Officer of the Bezos Family Foundation and the foremost expert on social emotional learning, neuroscience, and what is good practice with children. And it would take a full hour to cover all her accolades and areas of expertise. I will note that Ellen is this year's recipient of the Work and Family Researchers Network Lifetime Achievement Award. This award recognizes her body of work over the past 5 decades in early learning, in parent development, in work and family life, and in children's development, and it speaks volumes about her knowledge and skill. Ellen is a dear friend and a wonderful human being. She's here with us today to talk about how we can find our power in this impossibly hard moment. The power we need to care for our own well-being, the power to define trauma and understand its effects on the brain and learning, the power to guide children and families and to understand what they might be thinking and feeling. And we're especially grateful to Ellen and her Bezos Foundation colleagues for clearing out Ellen's calendar to be here with all of us today. This was just the speediest reaction we have ever been able to generate. And as I introduce Ellen, I would also like to welcome my colleague, Dr. Deborah Bergeron, our Deputy Director for Community Engagement and Innovation. In her role as our lead community facilitator, Dr. B will be helping to guide today's conversation as she guides many, many conversations that she has with you over our time at NHSA. So Ellen and Dr. B, thank you both for being with us today. Let's get started.
Thank you, Yasmina. And I echo that. It was amazing to put this together so fast. That is 100% Ellen dropping everything for our community. So I'm not sure we have the words for that. But we wanted to start, we were talking about how to get started, and Ellen said, well, how are folks doing? And, you know, we're not really sure. So we're going to ask you, and we're too big of a group to do a breakout or anything like that. But I have a Mentimeter question for you. And I'm going to present here. Whoops, hang on, I got to share my screen. I'm going to put it up on the screen, and there'll be just a very easy code for you to put in and to share where you are, what's happening with you. And what we want to know is, what are you doing to take care of yourself right now? So if you can go to menti.com, the code is at the top of the screen, but I think we're also going to have it dropped in the chat. Make it really easy. You can just copy and paste it. It's 3252766. And Ellen, this will give you a sense of what people are doing to take care of themselves. This is to take care of you. See a lot of breaks from the screen, Ellen. That's probably a good thing. I think those of you who are aware you're not doing enough for yourself concern me. You're important. So this gives us a sense of where folks are. And I will go ahead. This will continue to take your comments, and we really do want to continue to collect these. So just because it's not on the screen, please go ahead and keep loading the Menti with your answers, and we'll keep those. I will stop sharing and turn it over to Ellen so that she can get started.
Thank you so much. I'm just deeply, deeply honored to be with you today. I know that we are all floundering. We are all not sure how, what to do. It just is horrific beyond our imagination. And I know for me, feeling that I could be together with you, be together with this community, and learn from you as well as share from you what I'm doing made me feel, I don't want to say better or good, because there's no way of feeling better or good right now, but made me feel as if not helpless, not hopeless. And I think that that's the worst thing that we can feel right now, is helpless or hopeless, because we all have what I think of as basic needs. Yasmina talked about my work in social emotional learning, and come to see them in these issues in a slightly different way, which is that we all have basic needs. Children have them, adults have them. There are 5 basic needs that we have, but I want to talk about 2 of them today. And if there's any message that I have, it's take care of our own basic needs and our children's basic needs. And the first is to belong, to feel connected, to feel supported, to feel safe. Those we can't learn, we can't thrive, we can't function unless we feel that we belong, we fit in, we are safe, we can be ourselves, we feel heard, we feel understood, we feel supported. Those are basic needs of children. And I know that it's not the usual way we talk about this. But in the 7 years that I have been doing research for a new book on older children, I've come to see that it's really clear that these are basic needs, just like food, water, and shelter are basic needs. We have basic needs for these caring connections and to belong and to feel connected. And the second basic need that I want to talk about is agency, to do something. When things happen to us, the way to managing, to feeling in control, to feeling helped and to have hope, is to do something, to take action, to have some autonomy over ourselves. And I think that those are the two major take-home messages, both for our children. And I know you all have children around you, so it's hard to take care of yourselves. And yet it's, as Yasmina said on the call, it's like the message on the airplane, put on your oxygen mask first. I know it's trite, but it's just the easiest way to remember that we are role models for our children. And unless we can feel whole, unless we can feel hopeful, unless we can feel that we're taking action, unless we can feel we belong, we won't really be able to convey that to our children. With Mind in the Making, we've known for the 2 decades that we've looked at this research and tried to put this research into action, that we come first, and that's not selfish. That unless we learn skills, unless we take care of ourselves, we can't really help children. And I think we've been unusual in Mind in the Making in doing that. I want to talk a little bit about trauma. Trauma informed, and then I move it to asset informed, because I think that we have to always be working from strengths and what's positive. But just to go over a little bit about the basic biology or physiology of trauma, our amygdala, a part of our brain, registers threat. This is how we protect ourselves before we even often are consciously aware of it. And when that happens, our hypothalamus begins to pump adrenaline in our blood. And we all know that feeling of adrenaline in our blood, you know, when, like if you have a near miss in the car and all of a sudden you have so much energy, you can't see straight, your heart rate goes up, you breathe more rapidly, everything, your senses are heightened, you're on alert for danger so that you can defend and protect yourself. This is our basic biology. We react in 4 ways when that happens. We fight. We become aggressive to try to take care of ourselves. We flight or we flee. We try to get away from the danger. But there are 2 other ways that aren't talked about as much. We can freeze. That is, we can try to deflect attention from ourselves. And we can fawn, we can grovel, we can in a sense, suck up to the bully. I know that when my son was in early childhood and there was a kid about twice his size named Freddie in his class, my son made sure to be best friends with Freddie. And so Freddie would protect him, and that's called fawning. And I don't think I knew the name for it then, but I knew that it was one strategy for reacting. And those are the ways that we all react in trauma, when trauma happens, when something, and what trauma means, or what stress means, is that the situation that we're in is beyond our resources to manage it. That's essentially what it means. There can be all kinds of stress or bad things that happen to us. It tips into trauma when it's or severe stress, when it's, or toxic stress as it can be called, when it's greater than our resources to handle it, because we all know that some stress in life is very good. The second phase of our responding to severe stress or trauma is that then cortisol gets released. And this inhibits our ability to think clearly. And I think that for those of you who work with trauma-informed care, you all have learned that kids can't help it. And I think that that's the hardest thing about all of this, that if we've had trauma, having more trauma can trigger it, and we just can't help it. It just happens. It's, we can deal with it, but, it just happens biologically. And if we haven't had trauma, or this isn't triggering to us, it's very hard to realize that child who's acting really difficult, I visited a school a few weeks ago, and there was a child everyone in the school knew, named Chris. Immediately, everyone who walked into that school knew who Chris was, a little child. And pretty soon Chris was, needing to be taken out of his classroom and being in a safe room to be taken care of. And I think that the hardest thing to do for all of us to do is to recognize that those children, like Chris, like so many children, can't, or us, when we're in that situation, can't really help it. We can learn tools, but we can't really help it. And I know that sometimes when we see difficult behavior, it's just like snap out of it. Why are you doing this? But it's really, we can't help it. They can't help it. We can't help it. And so for us to recognize this as a biological inevitable process, just like we recognize that there are basic needs that we all have, I think is really important. What happens when the cortisol gets released in our blood is that we stop the ability to think carefully. It's hard to reason. It's hard to think critically. It's hard to make plans when that happens. And that's another byproduct of trauma, of severe stress that we have to recognize in ourselves and in others. So we have, I've listed about 6 cognitive biases that we have when this happens, things that we fall into. We get tunnel vision. We can only see one aspect of the threat. We might not be able to see the whole picture. I know once when I was robbed and then immediately was taken to the police station, someone took a paving stone in New York City. We know what paving stones are, and they smashed them into the window of the car, and they took all the Christmas presents that I had on the front seat of the car and my pocketbook and ran away. And I just thought I had this picture in my mind. But then when I went to the police station to try to identify the person, which I thought I would be perfectly able to do, I couldn't do it. I could only, it was tunnel vision. I couldn't pay attention to the whole situation. And another cognitive bias that we have is selective perception. And I'm going to talk about this because this will get into the kinds of things that we may want to do, because other people may want to do or think different things. And I think this is very much behind some of the divides that we have in our country. So I wanted to talk about this as a way of, because we've just had what's happened in Rochester. We've had what's happened, in Texas. We've had 311,000 incidents of school shootings in the last 10 to 12 years. We've had too much. And so we get selective perception. We're only paying attention to information that contributes to the way we understand the situation, and we exclude the information that casts any doubt on what we think. And then we have confirmation bias. We look for people who agree with us. We stay away from the people who disagree with us. We know about this during the partisan divide. We erect barricades against anything that discredits what we think or feel. It's why people can't necessarily get together at Thanksgiving or Christmas or holidays anymore, because we're holding on to our conclusions. Again, remember that this severe stress reaction impairs our ability to think clearly. Another thing that happens is that we get egocentric. It's easy to just pay attention to what we think and feel and to discount the views of others. We form attribution bias. That is, we attribute the problems to other people. It's those jerks, those ridiculous people. It's the police, it's the this, it's the that, that are causing the problems. And I'm watching that in the news coverage right away. We're looking for the person to blame in the situation. That makes us feel better. And then we have enemy images. We generate, we make that person who becomes the enemy in the we-they divides that we feel. We make that person into a terrible person. We generalize we stereotype, we generalize their traits. All police are alike, or all this or that or the other are alike. And we can see it on all sides of these divides that we're feeling. So I wanted to talk about this because I think it's so important for us to take care of ourselves and understanding how we feel. Now, I've been looking at a lot of research lately, and the research, one researcher whom I want to talk about, I think stands out because I've been reading books like How Do We Deal with a High Conflict in Our Country, and how do we deal with the divides that we have. And a woman named Megan Price from George Mason University has looked at all of these things that we do when we're defending against a threat, and we feel so many threats in the world that we live in too. And she's found an answer that may sound simple, but I don't think it's simple at all. It's curiosity. It's curiosity that stimulates the reward centers of the brain and can make us, can begin to counter the effects of trauma and stress. So the first tip that I have for taking care of yourself, and it's probably not one that's on many lists, is to be curious about yourself and your reaction. If in those moments where you're breathing deeply, if in those moments when you're stepping back and pausing your life, if in those moments when you're out in the woods, just some of the things I saw flash by on the screen, you can think about how you're reacting and be curious about that. That will begin to move us toward healing. It's, again, a very rewarding feeling. The second thing that I would suggest is to be curious about others. That when we look at, I was on a call a few hours ago where each of us talked about our reactions. And some people were saying, I live in a very conservative part of this country. Nobody is going to do anything about what happened. I just have to live with it. I talked to someone right after the school shootings on Tuesday, a woman who has been an enormous activist against racism. And she said she was feeling hopeless. She just was feeling that this country wasn't going to change. And I think that the potion that we can take against those feelings is to be curious about others. I was curious about her. I asked her a lot of questions, and I got her back in the conversation to a place of because she's been such an incredible role model and activist around issues of racism, about what she was doing, and she is doing something. So I think that that's perspective taking. That's the skill for those of you who know Mind in the Making. Being curious about others is the skill of perspective taking. Thinking about how other people think and feel, I think, is key to all of this. And so for those of you who are feeling that you're not doing enough to take care of yourself, and I saw that flash by the screen, it's really important that anything that you do to take care of yourself, to take care of the children or the adults in your lives, and to help them take care of you, because we all need mutual support, is beginning to take a step forward. So be curious about what you can do, because we need that support, we need that belonging, but we also need agency. We need to feel that we can do something. So to those tips, I think I would add to the tips that you all suggested, I think are so wonderful. Debbie, I wondered if you wanted to just list for a moment before we talk about taking care of children, some of the tips that really struck you and from this incredible audience. Audience is the wrong word, but we're in a circle. I just can't see all of you. We do a form of science called civic science. And civic science means that it's the wisdom of lived experience and that's the wisdom of research coming together. And so I wanted to do this healing circle with you, if you want to call it that. I wore my Native American jewelry. I always do. So, but it was to learn from you. So Dr. B, what are some of the things that really struck you?
Well, for me, I mean, this is the first thing I noticed, and I'm going to share this again because I think it's good for folks to see, you know, what we see here. I think these kinds of comments concern me a little bit when it's not about me, it's about families. And while I appreciate that, I think what you said in the beginning about being a strong self in order to be a support is really important. So I would emphasize that. There's a lot of faith language in here, a lot of prayer. And I mean, that stands out to me in a way that allows you to center yourself. And then, you know, physical activity, and whether it's walking, I see lots of yoga and physical activity. And I think some of those things, while they might not sound like the most important thing, they can be such a release that I think, you know, those kinds of things are important. And then the last thing that really stands out is family. You know, spending time with family and making sure you're with the people who care about you and that you care about, I think keeps you connected and centered around what matters most. You don't get too wrapped up in a lot of the chatter. I think that's the thing that concerns me. You know, we were talking earlier about my experiences being in school buildings and having things happen and having to sort of manage that. And one of the biggest challenges is doing it in the sea of messages that people get from all different directions, and they can be really toxic, even though it's hard to stay out of that. But they can be, you know, they can be counterproductive.
Yeah. So if you remember, for those of you who've done Mind in the Making training, we have a triangle. I think of it as the iron triangle, that when there's severe stress in your life, you look for support, you find the helpers, you look for, and then you can sometimes reframe the way that you think about it. So you can change the way you think about it. And then you take action. Those are the three things that make a difference. I was looking at the chat and someone asked about the neuroscience of emotions, and I do. And let's do that at another time. I think that's really important, but there are a lot of strategies that come out of James Gross's research, Ethan Kroos's research, a lot of wonderful research that comes out about how we can deal with trauma. One thing that I will share about that is stepping back. People have written reflecting, but going on the balcony, taking a bird's eye view of it all. Or thinking about yourself as the third person, or thinking about yourself as someone you admire. All of those are techniques that help us manage. And there are about 10 good techniques that we could share in another webinar, because at least for right at this moment, I want to get to talking about taking care of the little ones at our feet, as you were calling it, Dr. B. You know, what do we do? And you know, if you're a teacher or you're working in a program, you're probably not, with young children, you're not going to have a group discussion about this, because some children won't know anything and some children will know a lot. And that's up to individual families for how they handle it. But for the families who don't want their children to know about this, it would be uncomfortable to be able to bring it up. But you will want to see the children. If you notice that children are acting differently, you will want to take those children aside and ask them to tell you, you know, in some ways to get at what they're thinking, what's going on with them. If they want to tell you a story about what the ideas that they are having in their mind are, and then just writing them down. So that just jumps to the advice that you might give to parents and everyone, which is listen more than you talk. I ask adolescents for the most important parenting skill, and that was it. Number one, listen more than you talk. And I think, you know, in looking at, I worked with a lot of groups around 9/11, and parents were quick to give information when they didn't really know what children were thinking, what children were feeling. You know, some people thought, who were in the middle of the country, thought that New York or Washington or Pennsylvania were right next door to them when it was really far away. So it's really important with little children to listen and find out what they are thinking, and to listen and not interrupt. Teenagers also said to me to listen with when I was a child's mind, and as well as now I'm an adult's mind. So perspective taking, listen in ways that help you imagine what it would be like to be a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, whatever age children you have in your groups, so that you can understand developmentally what they're thinking. And often little kids will think that things are their fault, or they caused it, or you know, they dropped a plate and then the television news came on, and you know, it can be pretty magical. The way that we're the little young children are quick to feel that they're responsible for things that go wrong. So make sure that you really understand, if you're a parent or if a child in your group, as you can see, is bringing it up. Parents will often think that the TV on in the background is on in the background, but there is a great deal of research that shows that children are paying a lot of attention to it. It's not in the background. So if you can help parents know that and turn off the background noise, as you said, Dr. B, turn off all the social media if it's really making you feel out of control. That's important. But for parents, having the news on or the TV on nonstop, the kids are getting it, the kids are hearing it, and that's your choice. That's your choice. But know that your children are hearing things that you may, and paying attention to things that they may not want them to do. If I were a teacher and I could see that a child had heard the news, I would probably write down their words. I think that that's actually a lovely thing to do, because it gives people power back. And I know after 9/11, again, the children in West Virginia, where I'm from, because I went home and they all gave me their words to take back to the children of New York, wrote down these were young children, wrote down their words of sympathy and compassion for the children of New York. The second thing is answer their questions or give them information. And this I'll attribute to Erin Ramsey, whom many of you know, with whom I work. She always says less is more. I know she didn't make it up, but it's something to remember. Don't give them more info. This is like sex education, where we tell them everything and I didn't really want to know that much. Make sure that you give them information that just is at the right level for their age and for what they understand. Particularly, this goes to the notion of keeping the door open. This is not one conversation. Bruce Feiler, who some of you may know, wrote a book about happy families, has had this advice, which was keep the door open for conversations, because some kids may not want to talk right away, or may not register it right away, or may not hear it right away because they may hear it from their older brothers or sisters, or in school, or different places that they are. I think the third thing that's important is to assure them that you're doing everything that you can to keep them safe. I know that in this wacko world, this unbelievably horrific world that we live in, where things like this could happen, we can't totally promise enduring safety to our children, but we can assure them that we are doing everything that we can to keep them safe, to help them feel that they belong and to feel supported. And that's a good thing for the adults to do too. Ask ourselves, are we doing everything that we can in the schools to keep our children safe and to keep our teachers safe? This is about teachers' lives as well as about children's lives. And Beth Bye, who's the commissioner for children in Connecticut, wrote this wonderful post yesterday on social media about we always make it about the children, but this is about the teachers too. So the teachers, all the people who staff your program, you are the safety net. You are there day after day. You make those children feel loved and connected and taken care of and heard and understood. And this is a time for all of us to really honor teachers, to honor the people who teach and take care of and work with children. I've really never emotionally understood why we don't pay teachers the most in this country, and because we should. It's the most important job. I now understand it. We pay storytellers more because we're drawn to stories. But we need to get good at telling stories about ourselves, and that's a challenge for all of us to do. The fourth thing is the same thing that I said to parents, is to have children look for the helpers. If they've seen the news, look for the people who came in and helped. There were always people who came in and helped, people who comforted each other, people who helped each other, people in their own community who helped. I was a personal and longtime friend of Fred Rogers. He's the one who said, look for the helpers. And that wisdom, Fred was amazing. That wisdom just comes back to us all of the time. Look for the helpers. It's a wonderful way of turning, knowing that we all need support and that we can give support and be the helpers. And then the fifth thing is take action. And you have been given a great list of resources when you signed up for this webinar of all of the different kinds of action you take. But doing one thing, even one thing every day, one small thing that gives you hope back. I honestly, opposed to the woman I was sitting with at lunch the day that this happened, and it was just feeling so hopeless. I honestly believe that if we all take action, we can begin to chip away at the problems. I know in listening to the stories of the families of Sandy Hook and how they've coped with all of this, they did take action and they didn't see the results that they wanted, but they did see some results. So whether you're taking a small step or a big step, doing something, I think is critical to helping us make the world the kind of world that we want for ourselves and our children. And now I think, Debbie, you've got another poll to do. Yeah. Praying for your community. I love that.
Yeah, we were talking about, what you're doing for yourselves. You all always have such creative ideas. Let's look at what you are doing to take care of others, because I know you are. So we're going to collect these two, and let's look at our screen here. It's the same Menti code. What are some things that you're doing? Ellen has given us some really wonderful, very concrete, pretty simple ideas, but I have a feeling you all have some really good ones too. I think listening, look at all the listening. I liked Ellen pointing out not interrupting. I mean, really listening, really allowing, especially children, but really teachers too, to talk and to be heard. And we don't have to have all the answers. We can do the listening.
I love how many people are saying being present, not being distracted, but really being there. I mean, that's, again, the listen more than you talk.
Yeah. And, I'm going to pull out taking them to dinner. That's a good one. That's simple. It's a great gesture. And, sitting over a meal can be a time to talk and listen in a way that's different than in a formal setting. That's a really, really good idea.
And Advansi, you're right there. So the kind of support that you're providing is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, basic needs. And not forcing conversation. That's a really good point. As Ellen was saying, she was talking about children, but it's just as applicable to adults. Not everybody's ready to process. We all process it a different way at different times, and that has to be okay.
And again, listening with curiosity, so that if someone says something that's different from what you think and feel, that's their perspective.
Is your strategy for that, when you listen for curiosity, are you reflecting silently as you listen, or are you encouraging discourse and questions? What do you think?
Both. I mean, I think it's being curious, but also encouraging questions. I've been looking at some of the more effective ways that of helping community police deal with that moment of decision. You know, we all see those incidents where a police makes a decision, a police man or woman makes a decision to shoot or talk, to arrest, to tase, to chase, to not. And the work in conflict resolution and creating more peaceful societies has found that getting them in advance to think about what the person might be wanting to say with their behavior, rather than making assumptions about them, and really looking, police are trained to be very observant. I don't know why I'm talking about police so much today, but it's, but they're trained to be very observant. And so building on that sense of observation and asking questions, first asking questions. Yeah, food, keeping a jar of candy, keeping some food there.
And giving space for opinion. I really love that. And it's really about the people.
I love giving a moment of silence at 11:32. And like the orange shirts, you know, the orange shirts for the young woman who was killed after being in Obama's second inauguration, and people wore orange t-shirts all over the country. These symbolic things are going to help a lot in changing the conversation.
Keeping their routine. I actually really like this piece, especially for children. I think routine gives them that safety, that there might be space to have conversations that are difficult, but we'll go through our day and there's a certain safety about that routine. And we have a lot of grandparents on this call. I'm just going to say that. I've seen lots of grandkid comments. So a lot of really good ideas.
So I think that we could either decide that we will each make a commitment to ourselves to do one thing today and tomorrow and onward, to make this a world where we feel hope, where we can feel hope, where we can make the change that we want to see in the world. Or if anyone has questions in the chat box, I'm happy to answer them.
I don't think I saw, well,
The notion of how important it was for NHSA to take the moment of silence for the whole staff. That's wonderful. Sacred listening.
We did in every meeting that we had. Yeah, I mean, these are symbolic things, you're right, but they provide some release and relief.
They change the conversation. I mean, I think that if we're going to move away from a country that's so polarized and where people are beginning to wonder if democracy is possible, I think we have to show that democracy can work in little ways, in big ways.
Yeah. Well, I think, we'll get, Mauricio, we'll get the notes out when we send the link to we recorded this, so we'll make sure that the notes come to you. I know you gave some really good information that folks are curious about. It would be a lot easier to write it up. So we'll do that for you.
Okay.
But I think this has just been so wonderful. And, we can't thank Ellen enough for dropping everything and doing this. This was an important conversation to have. When we were talking about it, it was important to have it now. It was important for it to be swift, and we could not have done that without you. So thank you so much. I really want to say that you said a few things that make me think maybe we need a follow-up in a couple of weeks, because I think we could dig deeper into some of this stuff. So hint, hint, we'll talk about that later.
Happy to.
I do want to shout out and recognize that we do have folks from San Antonio, Uvalde area on this call. I think there are quite a few of you. And since you're here, I think it's important on behalf of NHSA and all of the Head Starts really around the country. We're all impacted, but we know that these programs, their staff, children, and families are impacted infinitely more than we can probably imagine, and that we're wishing you peace. In moments like these, the biggest enemy we face isn't political, it's cynicism and exhaustion of everyday Americans who just don't see any evidence that anything can be done. The truth is, change is possible. I think we've seen that today. In recent years, gun safety has gone from a political third rail to a winning issue. Many have spent years building coalitions and making change. We have to remember two things. First, be gentle with ourselves. And second, that progress on any front is slow. If we can accept the reality of slow progress, we have every reason to take action today. For everyone on the call who wants to take action, whether that action is caring for yourself, helping the children and families you serve through this time, or organizing for change, we will share this recording and the resources we discussed on this call. For now, we'd like to extend our gratitude one more time to Ellen for joining us today and sharing her expertise. Thank you so much, Ellen, and thank you to everyone for joining us on this webinar. Have a great afternoon.